And a good Monday morning, football fans. Appreciate you jumping in on the stream here on Birds 365 with your Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. The countdown is literally on now. We are just 10 days away from the NFL draft. Seems like we've been 10 days away for about 40 days, but that's just me. We are now actually 10 days away from the NFL draft, and we are certainly going to talk a lot of draft today. But prior to that, became a pretty big story over the weekend, Johnny Mac, the fact that Budda Baker, one of the most talented safeties in the National Football League, is attempting to talk his way out of Arizona. Your boy Jonathan Gannon not influencing people and winning friends there in Arizona. They're trying to talk their way out of that town in a heartbeat. But if Budda Baker is going to hit the open market, if the Arizona Cardinals are actually going to comply with his request and make him available via trade, the Philadelphia Eagles should have interest in him, should they not?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is a three-time All-Pro player, two-time first-team All-Pro player. This has been a top safety. He's only 27 years old. This is the kind of player, like 95% of the time, I said, you give me the big names, I say no. No. Odell Beckham, no. Ezekiel Elliott, no. Devin White, no. Even Jarvis Landry at a much cheaper price, no. All the time I say no, and people get upset. And they say no, and then I say yes, and people get upset. He's good. He's 27. He's a team leader. And you mentioned Gannon. Gannon's got nothing to do with it because people have said he doesn't want to play in Gannon's defensive scheme. He's got no money, guaranteed money left on his deal. That's how the NFL works. When that ends, you want an extension. And he wants to get paid $20 million. Two things about that. One, you can want whatever you want. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. So people stipulate. Derwin James makes $19 million out with the Chargers. That's where he's getting that number. He wants to be the highest paid safety. That's how it works generally when you're a top tier player. So those are two things. Number one. And then it comes to the evaluation of the player. Like, I don't know what the Eagles think of the player, but they are willing to pay when they think players are top of the line at their particular position. From my perspective, he's top of the line. He does everything. He's right there. Now, would I think the Eagles would like Derwin James a little bit more, Minkah Fitzpatrick a little bit more for this defense? Probably. And they're the two highest paid safeties, by the way. But they're not available. I mean, there's no reason not to do the due diligence. I know Howie will do that. And there's no guarantee Arizona's going to trade him. I still think they're not going to trade him. I think they're going to give him an extension and give him the guaranteed money that he wants, and everything will be fine, ultimately. But if he is available, if he does force his way out, yes, this is the rare time where I say yes, the Eagles should make a move. The Eagles are a Super Bowl contender. I can't picture them coming into next season with their back seven, Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds or Justin Evans and Nicholas Morrow. I can live with Nakobe Dean because he's got some upside. If you're a Super Bowl contender, you're not coming into the season with that. Now, maybe they get somebody in the draft. Maybe they get work another trade with a cheaper player. Well, you're not going to get a better player at this stage. And same thing with A.J. Brown last year during draft night. They saw it. Remember what they wanted to do at wide receiver. Remember what they went through before they went to get A.J. Brown. Calvin Ridley didn't work out. Christian Kirk didn't work out. Who was a very good player in Jacksonville. But they didn't want to pay him what he got in Jacksonville. Understandable. They paid more for A.J. Brown because they thought A.J. Brown, and by the way, they turned out to be correct, was top of the line, top 5 level player. And they paid him. I think this is a top 5 level player at safety. And to me, the contract I think everybody's focused on because of Jalen Hurts and the salary cap and all that stuff. The contract is not the issue. The issue is, does Arizona want to trade him? That's the biggest issue. And the issue is the Eagles' evaluation of the player. If they like the player, they will pay him if they can get him.
Yeah, but here's where I think you're overstepping, John. The contract is not the issue. Didn't they like TJ Edwards?
Not the same, Jody. That's what I'm trying to say. AJ Brown, they think TJ Edwards is a good player. Good player. They don't think he's a great player. I'm saying if they think you're a great player, they thought AJ Brown was a great player. Turned out they was correct. They were willing. They're willing to go to that level for people they think are great players. Marcus Williams at safety last year in free agency. They had a level. They liked him. They liked him a lot. They really wanted him. They don't think he's great. They think he's good, really good, which, by the way, I also agree with. They went to a level. Baltimore went above it, and they said, all right, we're done. Same thing with Christian Kirk at wide receiver. All right, we're done. If they don't think Budda Baker's better than Marcus Williams, I agree with everybody. They're going to go to a certain level and say, we're done. If they think he's A.J. Brown, they're going to say, nah, we're going to go get him. That's the biggest hurdle. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know what they think of him. To me, the contract is not the hurdle at all.
Yeah.
Does Arizona want to trade him? Do the Eagles think he's a great player? If they think he's a great player, that's what I should say. If they think he's a great player, contract doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think the contract does matter because the position matters. And the Eagles have not shown the desire, the willingness to pay top of the dollar at that position money to a safety. They just haven't. And I know you talk all the time about you don't love the Fangio defense, that too many guys play it in the National Football League right now. But the Eagles are going to stick with it. They'll tweak it a little bit. I think that the new defensive coordinator won't run it the exact same way that Jonathan Gannon did. But Budda Baker is a great player. I think he's one of the best safeties in the National Football League. He's not a great fit for the way the Eagles played defense each of the last 2 years. And we don't know what it's going to look like under a new DC. We assume, because we all heard the coach say, there are certain tenets that I want my defense to have. He made it sound very much like Deshaun Desai is going to fit those tenets and call the defense the way he liked it called these last 2 years, working in unison with Jonathan Gannon. Budda Baker is a tackling machine. He's not a big play safety. C.J. Gardner-Johnson had as many interceptions in how many games he missed last year? 4 or 5? What did he play? 13 out of 17?
Games.
Missed 5 games. So in 12 games, he had as many interceptions as Budda Baker has had in the last 5 years. That's what they look for from their safeties. That's the type of safeties, or at least that's what they've looked for the last 2 years under Gannon, and assuming it's going to be at least similar, if not damn close to the same. That's not Budda Baker. He is a great tackling safety. He's a box safety. He's a come up to the line of scrimmage safety, and they haven't played that kind of defense the last 2 years. So you're not only stretching your payroll, you're not only reevaluating what the safety position is, but you're reevaluating it for a guy who isn't a perfect fit for the type of defense you want to play. When you get north, now we're talking north, of 13, 14 million, because he wants it redone. And I know they can do salary cap gymnastics and move the money around it. I get that. They can make it more palatable the first year and the second. At some point, you got to pay the piper. You can't just make the money disappear. Howie's great at working a cap, but he doesn't have a magic wand that makes it disappear. To take it to that level for a guy who's great in what he does, but what he does doesn't really fit with what the Eagles have asked for out of that position. Yeah, that's where I think the amount of the salary comes in. Will they go to those lengths to get that type of player at a position that they have historically under Howie Roseman not put the highest of salary money toward it? Yeah, I don't think they're going to do it. I think that I would like to see them do it. I'm a huge Budda Baker fan because that would signify that they are flexible with their defense, which I'm hoping Sean Desai does bring that to the table. But until I see it, I can't believe it. And that's why I don't think they're going to be involved in the Budda Baker sweepstakes.
Well, I can't prove it to people, and you and I were texting, but they were going to 12 million for Marcus Williams. So, I mean, he got 14 from Baltimore last year. So they're willing to pay when they think they have, in that case, a good player. But, you know, they're very disciplined. Budda, in theory, is a better player. I hear you about the fit, but he's also a good coverage player. He plays in the slot. I mean, they love that. They love the mirrored. He played more free safety than in the box. Very good in the box safety. But they play a different style of defense. They have. He's a very good coverage safety as well. As far as the big plays, look, CJ had a great season. If CJ came back at $8 million, the Eagles offered him $8 million. But he made I think a lot of people don't realize, and it's not his fault because he made the transition. That's a very difficult transition to make. He's a corner going to safety, made a lot of splash plays. You know, it helps when your defensive line is getting 70 sacks or your defense is getting 70 sacks as a whole. You know, if he came back at $8 million a year and he didn't have all the issues and he didn't felt disrespect, he's not having the season he was last year from a splash play. That stuff regresses to the mean. We always talk about. The Eagles know that. Nick Sirianni knows that. This is a sound, productive player who knows how to play the position as good as anybody in this league. This is a much more from play to play consistent player than CJ Gardner-Johnson. I mean, much more from play to play. There's not the highs. There's not the lows. This guy's just good. He's in the conversation with James and Fitzpatrick. That's the conversation he's in. He's not in the conversation with CJ Gardner-Johnson. I know everybody falls in love with the interceptions. That's not going to continue. That's not. Now, when he gets an opportunity, he's a playmaker. When he gets a chance to get his hands on the football, he's going to make a play. And that is valuable. I'm not saying it's not valuable. I'm talking about CJ. That's valuable. But, you know, mistakes are not valuable. And there's, you know, as he's learning the position, I'll probably get better this year because he's got more and more time. And by the way, Detroit, we don't even know how Detroit's going to use him. They might put him back in the slot. I don't know. We have to see how they're going to use him. I don't even know if he's a long-term safety. I know he had a good season for the Eagles, but these are different levels of players. And, you know, I always went back to Chip Kelly. My biggest criticism of Chip Kelly is if you woke up in a morning in a perfect world and say, hey, Chip, you can have Tom Brady or you can have Peyton Manning. He wouldn't want him because he didn't want anybody running the game from the line of scrimmage. He wanted the control of that. He wanted. And that to me, and I say it all the time with this defense, I'm not a fan of the philosophy, the scheme. If you don't want good players, well, that's a problem. That's a problem. If you can't fit a top 5 player at a position into your philosophy, well, you better go back into a room and figure out what the hell you're doing wrong. So that to me, that's why I say the biggest hurdle is evaluation. I agree with you. The Eagles might say, this guy's not fit for what we want to do defensively. And then I'd look at the Eagles and I say, well, you guys got to figure it out because if you're turning down, and again, there's so many hurdles. You got to get probably the 30th pick in the draft. You got to pay him $15-16 million. The cap part of it, they'll manipulate. That's not an issue. The first 2 years and they'll spike in the third year and Howie will revisit it and on goes as long as you have an owner who doesn't care and Jeffrey Lurie doesn't care. You know, they did it with Carson Wentz. This is pittance to Carson Wentz. They ate that dead money. Andrew Brandt and I were telling you all offseason, they're not going to eat that. They're not going to eat that. They're not going to eat that. They ate it and they didn't give it. And it hurt them for a year, but that was massive. This is a regular player, even at that level. It's not going to affect him at all, even if it falls flat on his face. And it's not going to fall flat on his face because he's a really good player, barring injury, of course. So that's my case, Jody.
All right. And where you and I part ways is Carson Wentz aside. They all have to live by the cap. And Howie may be very good at manipulating it, moving within it. He might be as good as anybody, if not better than anybody in the league. But you do have to adhere to it. And knowing that the Jalen Hurts contract is coming and knowing it's going to be huge, I don't think you can just say, well, Howie will figure it out. Howie will maneuver it. Howie will get his way around it. If that were the case, they would have kept a guy like TJ Edwards. And I know he's not great. That's not great. Well, he's a linebacker who can. Are the Eagles going to be better at the linebacker position with Nick Morrow and TJ Edwards? Come on. You can't begin to make that argument. You're a huge Edwards guy. How can you not say, yes, the Eagles will be better with TJ Edwards than not without him?
I've said from day one that the Eagles should have kept TJ Edwards. From day one, from 16
then why didn't they keep
in,
TJ Edwards?
Because they evaluated that he does.
Right.
They don't think he's as good a player as I do. Jody, where do we start this process with the Eagles in the salary cap? They're underwater, this and that. Everybody's hand wringing. As you sit here today, April 17th, there are I'm looking at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams. 6 teams in the NFL. 6 teams in the NFL with more cap room than the Philadelphia Eagles. 6 teams. Now, part of that is because they're setting up for Jalen.
Right.
But they can grab any player they want. Now, they can't grab 5 players. If they want the player, if they wanted A.J. Brown this year instead of last year, and he didn't have the final year of his rookie deal, and I had to give him $25 million right away, they could get that player. They could get any player they want along with Jalen Hurts right now. Right now, there 6 teams in the entire NFL has more cap space than.
But here's where you and I again part ways, John. You're evaluating what they could do. I'm evaluating what they have done. They lost 7 starters this year to free agency, and they replaced them with Jags. Just another guy. Not one making more than $2 million a year. Why would you do something? Why would you just let 7 starters walk out the door and replace them with subs? Well, I'll give you my guess. They know that they're going to have to sign the Jalen Hurts contract. And it's going to be big, and it's going to eat up a big chunk of the cap, and they're leaving that money available, and that's why there are only 6 other teams in the NFL that have more cap room than that. Because they know that's coming. It hasn't happened yet, but they know that's coming.
Any of those
well, if you're going to go get Budda Baker, you're going to have to eat into that money for Jalen Hurts. And that's why they haven't re-signed at Edwards. That's why they haven't gotten a Budda Baker, because they know that the cap is going to get shrunken immediately when they get the Jalen Hurts deal done.
They lost 5 starters on defense. They lost Javon Hargrave, who's the best. Most people would consider C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Then they lost Marcus Epps, T.J., and I would say T.J.'s better, and T.J.'s the guy they should have brought back, which I have said from day one, and Kaiser White. Any top 5 players at their position in there?
Well, any top 25 players in the positions that they've signed players to replace those guys.
Well, you're missing the
point. Is it
point.
not a drop-off? Are you going to argue any of the guys that they've signed to replace the 5 that you just ran down are in the neighborhood of the players that they lost?
No, I'm not. I said if they start the season with Nakobe Dean and Nicholas Morrow and Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds or Justin Evans, who one of you, they're screwed. They're screwed if they start the season with those players. I'm saying to you, they are willing to pay top-tier players. They will go a set. Budda Baker at his position is better than Javon Hargrave at his position. They were willing to go to a high level. Now, defensive tackles get paid more. They were willing to go to a high level with Javon Hargrave, but they said from early on, if it gets to 20, we're out. We're out. We're not going above 20 for Javon Hargrave. I don't believe they should have went above 17, 18. and they were never going to be in it. CJ, they wanted CJ back, and then they pivoted towards James Bradbury.
So
and
do
they
you
kept
think
Bradbury in
49ers
sled.
made a mistake in paying Jalen Hargrave what they did?
$21 million, I guarantee he's cut in 2 years. Guarantee. Because the expectations, I say this all the time, the expectations are now so out of whack in San Francisco. They just paid a defensive tackle $21 million. They're going to expect Aaron Donald. And he's a good player, but he's not that good. And the expectations are going to be so out of whack. It happens all the time. But I know we got to get to our buddy Scott Grayson. He's waiting. I see him in the green room.
You see him in the green room. I see him in his car. I guess he's got to get somewhere. Yeah. So we better get the break.
His green room is the car.
We better get the break and punch him up next. Scott Grayson from Fox 29 going to join us here on Birds 365.